The Famous 5 Stories by Enid Blyton. Five on a hike together. Shouted George, running after her cousin as she went along to her classroom.
Anne, I've just been down to the letterboard, and there's a letter from your brother Julian. I've brought it for you.
Anne read it quickly. She looked up at George, her eyes shining.
George, Julian and Dick have got a few days off at our half-term weekend. Somebody's won a scholarship, and the boys have got 2 days tacked onto a weekend to celebrate. They want us to join them in a hike and all go off together, all over the moors. What a glorious idea,
said George.
Let's read the letter, Anne.
But before she could read it, a mistress came along.
Georgina, you should be in class, and you too, Anne.
George scowled. She hated to be called by her full name. She went off without a word. Anne tucked the letter into her pocket and rushed off joyfully. She and George talked about it again after morning school.
We get from Friday morning till Tuesday,
said George.
Julian says he'll telephone us tonight and arrange everything,
said Anne.
I hope it'll be a nice, fine weekend. It'll still be October, so there's a chance of a bit of warm sunshine. The woods will be beautiful,
said George.
And won't Timmy enjoy himself? Let's go and tell him the news.
The boarding school that the two girls were at was one that allowed the children to bring their own pets to school. There were kennels down in the yard for various dogs, and Timmy lived there during term time. The two girls went to get him. He flung himself on the two girls, licking and pawing and barking.
Silly dog, mad dog,
said George, and thumped his back affectionately.
Listen, Tim, we're going off for the weekend with Julian and Dick. What do you think of that?
Julian rang up that night as he'd promised. He'd got everything planned already. Anne listened thrilled.
It sounds super,
she said.
Yes, we can meet where you say, and we'll be there as near as we can on time. Anyway, we can wait about if you others aren't there. Yes, we'll bring the things you say. Oh, Julian, won't it be fun?
Anne and George went to see their housemistress to tell her that they were going walking.
My brother says he has written to you,
said Anne.
So you'll know all about it tomorrow, Miss Peters. And George's mother will be writing too. We can go, can't we?
Oh, yes. It'll be a lovely half-term for you,
said Miss Peters.
Especially if this sunny weather lasts.
The two girls got their things ready as Friday came near. Both had rucksacks, which they packed and repacked several times. One by one, more and more things were added. It seemed a long time till Friday, but at last it came. Both girls woke up very early indeed. They ate an enormous breakfast, then they got their rucksacks, ready packed the night before, said goodbye to Miss Peters, and went to fetch Timmy. He was waiting impatiently for them, and barked madly when they came near. In a trice he was out of his kennel yard, and capering round them, almost tripping them up.
"Row!"
said Timmy.
"Row, row!"
Julian and Dick were also on their way. They ran for the bus and leapt in.
"Ha! Running away from school?"
said the conductor.
"Have to report you, you know."
"Very funny,"
said Julian. They had to get out at the next village and cut across country to get another bus route. They managed to catch a bus there easily and settled down comfortably in their seats. It was half an hour's run from there to where they'd planned to meet the girls.
"Here you are, young sirs,"
called the conductor as the bus ran into a village. "Thanks," said the boys, and got out.
"Now, are the girls here or not?"
said Julian.
"They have to walk from a tiny railway station about 2 miles away."
They were not there. Julian and Dick went to have a drink of orangeade at the village store. They'd hardly finished when they saw the two girls looking in at the door. Anne rushed at her brothers.
"Hello,"
said Julian, and gave Anne a hug. He was very fond of his young sister.
"Hello, George. Hello, Timmy."
Timmy went nearly mad with joy at being with all four of his friends.
Get down, Timmy. Anyone would think you'd been away from Julian and Dick for at least 10 years,
said George.
I say, are those sandwiches?
said Anne. She pointed to a ledge at the back of the counter.
Yes, they're sandwiches, miss,
said the shopwoman.
I've made them for my son who works over at Blackbush Farm. He'll be in for them soon.
I suppose you couldn't make us some, could you?
asked Julian.
Yes, I can make you all you want.
Said the shopwoman.
What do you want? Cheese, egg, ham or pork?
Well, we'd like some of all of those.
Said Julian.
The bread looks so nice too.
I make it myself. All right, I'll go make you some. You tell me if anyone comes into our shop while I'm gone.
She disappeared. A tall man appeared at the entrance of the shop, a bicycle in his hand. "Ma!" he called. The children guessed who he was at once, the son who worked over at Blackbush Farm.
Your mother's hard at work cutting bread,
said Dick.
Shall I get her for you?
"No, I'm in a hurry," said the man, and he set his bicycle by the door, came in, reached over the counter for his sandwiches, and then went back to his bicycle. "Tell my mother I've been in," he said. "And you might tell her I'll be home late today. Got to take some stuff to the prison." He was off at once, sailing down the road on his bicycle. The woman suddenly came in, a knife in one hand, a loaf in the other.
Did I hear Jim?
She said.
Oh, yes, he's got his sandwiches.
He said he was in a hurry.
Explained Julian.
And he said we were to tell you he'd be late today because he had to take some stuff to the prison.
I've got another son there,
said the woman. The four looked at her. She guessed their thoughts and smiled.
Oh, my Tom isn't a prisoner. He's a warder.
I'd heard there is a big prison on this moor,
said Julian.
It's marked on our map, too. We're not going near it, of course.
No, don't you take the girls near there,
said the woman, disappearing again.
If I don't get on with your sandwiches, you'll not have them before tomorrow morning.
At last, the sandwiches were finished.
How much is that?
Julian asked. She told him. Julian put down the money.
Thanks. Come on, now we'll really start.
It was lovely walking along in the sun. They soon left the little village behind and took a winding lane. They climbed over a stile in the high hedge and walked over a field towards a small wood, which Julian informed them was Coney Copse. They very nearly lost Timmy in Coney Copse. A rabbit disappeared down a very big hole, and Timmy was actually able to get down a little way. Then he got stuck. He scrabbled violently with his feet, but it was no good. He was well and truly stuck. Anne had to lie down and wriggle in a little way to reach him. She was the only one small enough to get into the hole. She caught hold of Timmy's back legs and pulled hard. Somehow he came backwards. He whined loudly. Anne was pulled out by her legs, and poor Timmy came too, pulled by his. He whined and went to George.
He's hurt himself somewhere,
said George anxiously.
I know he has. He wouldn't whine like that if he wasn't hurt.
They left Coney Copse and went on, George rather silent. Timmy trotted beside her, also rather quiet.
Now, here's where I thought we might have our lunch,
said Julian at last.
Fallaway Hill. It's a good name for it, too. It falls away steeply, and we've got a marvellous view.
They lazed for some time in the sun after they'd finished their meal. Then they settled their rucksacks on their backs again, with their macks fastened to them, threw their blazers over their shoulders, and set off down Fallaway Hill. Timmy followed, but he didn't bound about as usual. George looked round for him and frowned.
What is the matter with Timmy?
She said. They all stopped and watched him. He came towards them, and they saw that he was limping slightly with his left hind leg. George dropped down beside him and felt the leg carefully.
I think he must have twisted it, sprained it or something when he was down that rabbit hole,
she said. She patted him gently on the back, and he winced.
I don't think there's much damage done,
said Julian, feeling the hind legs.
But I must be certain,
said George.
Did you say we come to a village soon, Ju?
Yes, Beacon's village. We can ask if there's a vet anywhere in the district, if you like.
Poor boy,
said George.
Poor Timmy. I do hope his leg will be all right tomorrow. I can't possibly go on with the hike if it isn't.
It was rather a gloomy company that came to Beacon's village. Julian made his way to a little inn that stood in the middle, called Three Shepherds. A woman was shaking a duster out of a window. Julian called up to her.
I say, is there a vet anywhere in this district? I want someone to have a look at our dog's leg.
No vet here,
answered the woman.
But if you want your dog's leg seen to, you go up to Spiggy House up along there. Mr. Gaston lives there with his horses, and he knows about dogs too. Oh, thank you,
said George gratefully.
Is it very far? About half a mile.
said the woman.
See that hill? You go up there, take the turn into the right, and you'll see a big house. That's Spiggy House.
The four held a little council,
George and I will go up to this Mr. Gaston's.
said Julian.
But I think you and Dick should go on to the farmhouse I plan to stay in for the night and make arrangements for us. We don't want to leave it to the last minute. It's called Blue Pond Farmhouse, about 1.5 miles away, through the village and turn right.
Right.
Said Dick.
I'll take Anne now.
After we've been to Mr. Gaston's, we'll join you there.
Said Julian. Julian set off up the hill with George and Timmy. Anne and Dick turned away and walked through the village. It began to get dark very suddenly. The sun had gone and a big black cloud slid smoothly over the sky.
It's going to rain.
Said Dick.
Blow. I thought it was going to be a lovely evening.
They went up the road that led out of the village and then came to a turning on the right. They went up it. It wound round and about and then went downhill into a very muddy bit indeed. Anne found herself sloshing about in thick mud. Dick looked about in the deepening twilight. He made out something above him in the high hedge that grew on the steep bank each side.
Look, a stile.
He said.
I expect that leads up to the farmhouse. A short cut, probably.
They scrambled up the bank to the stile. Dick helped Anne over, and they found themselves in a wide field. In front of them was a narrow path, running between crops of some sort.
Yes, this is obviously a short cut.
Said Dick, pleased.
I expect we'll see the lights of the farmhouse in a minute.
And then, with the rain dripping on them, a noise came to their ears. Bells! Wild, clanging bells, sounding without a stop, jangling out over the dark countryside in peal after peal. Anne held on tightly to Dick.
What is it? Where are those bells? What are they ringing for?
Whispered Anne. Dick had no idea. Quite suddenly the bells stopped, and an enormous silence took the place of the wild ringing.
Come on.
Said Dick. He took Anne's arm. The path at last led to a gate, and then, oh, wonderful sight, not far off they saw a light shining.
That must be Blue Pond Farmhouse.
Said Dick thankfully.
Come on, Anne. Not much farther now.
They followed a muddy path to a little door set in a white stone wall. Nearby was a window, and in it shone the light they'd seen so thankfully. An old woman sat near the light, her head bent over some sewing. Dick knocked. Nobody answered. They looked at the old woman by the lamp and saw that she was still sewing.
Perhaps she's deaf.
Said Dick, and he knocked again, much more loudly. Still the old woman sewed on placidly. She must indeed be deaf. Dick tried the handle of the door. It opened at once.
We'll just have to walk in and announce ourselves.
Said Dick, and he stepped onto the worn mat inside the door. On his right was a door a little ajar. Dick pushed the door open and walked boldly in, followed by Anne. Still the old woman didn't look up. Dick had to walk right up to her before she knew he was in the room. Then she leapt up. She stared at them, her hand over her heart.
Oh, you give me such a fright,
She said.
Where did you come from this dark night? We've been looking for this place.
Said Dick.
Blue Pond Farmhouse, isn't it?
The old woman pointed to her ears and shook her head.
Deaf as a post.
She said.
No good talking to me, my dear. You've lost your way, I suppose.
Dick nodded. Then he pointed out to the dark, rainy night, and then pointed to Anne's wet shoes and clothes. The old woman knew what he meant.
You've lost your way. You're wet and tired, and you don't want me to turn you out. But there's my son, you see. He don't like strangers here.
Dick pointed to Anne, and then to a sofa in a corner of the room. Then he pointed to himself, and then outside. Again the old woman understood at once.
You want me to give your sister shelter, but you'll go out into the night?
She said, and Dick nodded.
My son mustn't see either of you,
Said the old woman, and she pulled Anne to what the girl thought was a cupboard. But when the door opened, she saw a very small, steep wooden staircase leading upwards into the roof.
You'll go up there.
Said the old woman to Anne.
Go up, Anne.
Said Dick, rather troubled.
I don't know what you'll find there. If it's too bad, come down. See if there's a window or something you can call out from, and then I'll know if you're all right.
Yes.
Said Anne in rather a trembling voice, and she went up the steep, dirty wooden stairs. They led straight into a little loft. A tiny window opened out of one side. Anne went to it and called out,
Dick, are you there? Dick?
Yes, I'm here.
said Dick.
What's it like, Anne?
It's not bad. There's a fairly clean mattress and a rug. I'll be all right. But what about the others, Dick?
I'll look out for them and arrange something. You make yourself really comfortable. There's a shed or something out here. I shall be quite all right. Yell for me if you want me.
Anne went back into the room. She ate all her food. Then she felt sleepy and lay down on the mattress, throwing the rug over her. She meant to listen for the others to come, but she was too tired. She fell fast asleep. Dick was prowling about down below. He came to a small barn with piles of straw in one corner. He flashed his torch cautiously round.
This will do for me.
He thought.
I can be quite comfortable here in that straw.
Dick thought that probably George and Julian would come in through the same gate as he and Anne had used. He found a broken-down shed near the gate and sat down on a box there, waiting for them to come. He yawned.
I'm too sleepy to watch any more.
He decided.
I shall fall off this box with sleep if I don't go and lie down in that straw. Anyway, I think I'd hear if the others came.
Using his torch cautiously again, he made his way to the barn. He shut the door behind him and bolted it roughly from the inside by running a stick through two hasps. He flung himself down on the straw and immediately fell asleep. Outside, the sky became clearer and clearer. The moon came up, not fully, but large enough to give some light. Dick awoke suddenly and lay for a moment wondering where he was. Then he heard a noise, a scratching on the wooden walls of the barn. And then he heard a voice, a hoarse whisper.
Dick! Dick!
Dick was amazed. Could it be Julian? The tapping came again, and then the voice a little louder.
Dick! I know you're there. I saw you go in. Come here to the window. Quiet now.
Dick didn't know the voice. It wasn't Julian's, and it certainly wasn't either George's or Anne's. Then how did the owner know his name and that he was there?
Buck up,
said the voice.
I've got to go in half a tick. I've got that message for you.
Dick decided to go nearer to the window. He cautiously knelt up in the straw and spoke just underneath the window.
I'm here,
he said, trying to make his voice deep and grown up.
You've been long enough coming,
grumbled the one outside. And then Dick saw him through the window. Just a face, dim and wild-eyed, with a round, bullet-like head. He crouched back, thankful that the face couldn't see him in the darkness of the barn.
Here's the message from Neela,
said the voice.
2 trees, gloomy water, Saucy Jane, and he says Maggie knows. He sent you this. Maggie's got one too.
A bit of paper fluttered in at the broken pane. Dick picked it up in a daze. What was all this? Was he dreaming? The voice came again, insistent and urgent.
You heard all that, Dick. 2 trees, gloomy water, Saucy Jane and Maggie knows too. Now I'm going.
There came the sound of someone cautiously creeping round the barn, and then there was silence. Dick sat amazed and bewildered. He put his torch on cautiously and looked at the piece of paper he'd picked up. It was a dirty half-sheet with pencil marks on it that meant nothing to Dick at all. Words were printed here and there, but they were all nonsense to him.
I'm sure I must be dreaming,
thought Dick, and put the paper into his pocket. He lay back in the straw. He felt his eyes closing. But before he was quite asleep, he heard cautious footsteps again. This time someone tried the door, but the wooden stick was in the hasps. Whoever it was outside shook the door and the stick fell out at once. The man shook the door again and then opened it. He came inside and shut the door behind him. Dick caught a quick glimpse of him. No, this wasn't the same man as before. This was a man with a head of thick hair. He sat down on a sack and waited. He talked to himself after a while, but Dick could only make out a word or two.
"What's happened?" he heard. "How much longer do I wait?"
Then there was a mumble, and Dick couldn't catch a word. He sat still and quiet then, and Dick found his eyes closing once more. He slept heavily all night long. When morning came, he awoke suddenly and sat up. He was alone in the barn. Dick stood up and stretched himself. He felt very hungry. He went cautiously outside and looked up at the tiny window of the loft where Anne had spent the night.
Are you all right, Anne?
Called Dick in a low voice. She pushed open the tiny window and smiled at him.
Yes, but I daren't go down because that son is downstairs.
I'll wait for him to go out to his work then, before I go and see the old woman,
said Dick.
Shall I wait till I hear you call me?
Anne asked. Dick nodded and disappeared into the barn in a hurry. He'd heard footsteps. A man came into sight. A broad, short, hunched-up man with a shock of untidy hair. He was the man that Dick had seen in the barn the night before. He was muttering to himself and looked very bad-tempered indeed. Dick crouched down in the barn. The man walked past. Dick listened for his footsteps to die away. He heard the opening of a gate somewhere. Then it crashed behind the man.
I'd better take my chance now,
thought Dick, and he went quickly out of the barn and up to the little white house. Dick walked right into the house and found the woman washing up a few dishes in a cracked old sink. She stared at him in dismay.
I'd forgotten about you, and the girl too. Is she still up there? Get her down quickly before my son comes back, and then go, both of you.
Anne, come down at once. He's gone,
shouted Dick.
Hurry!
Anne tumbled quickly down the stairs. Dick caught her arm and both children tore out of the house and down the path. Anne was quite scared.
That awful man,
she said.
Oh, Dick, what a horrible place. Honestly, I think Julian must be mad to choose a place like that to sleep in for the night. Horrible little house.
But before Dick could answer, a boy came by, whistling.
Hello,
he said.
You hiking? Yes,
said Dick.
Can you tell me if that place up there is Blue Pond Farmhouse?
He pointed back to the old woman's house. The boy laughed.
That's no farmhouse. That's Mrs. Taggart's place, and a dirty old place it is. Don't you go there, or her son'll drive you off. Dirty Dick, we call him. He's a terror. Blue Pond Farmhouse is down along there, see? Past the Three Shepherds Inn and away up to the left. Thanks,
said Dick. The boy waved and set off across a moorland path.
Dick, let's go down to the Three Shepherds,
said Anne.
And telephone Blue Pond Farmhouse from there, shall we?
They made their way to the inn. On the sign, 3 shepherds were painted, looking rather gloomy.
They look like I feel,
said Anne.
We must telephone,
said Dick, and then he suddenly stopped just as he was going into the inn. Someone was calling him.
Dick! Dick! Anne! Look, there they are! Hey, Dick! Dick!
Dick swung round in delight. He saw Julian, George and Timmy racing along the village street, shouting and waving. Timmy was first to reach them, of course, and there was no sign of limping either.
I'll ask for breakfast straight away,
said Julian.
All news later.
He led the way to the inn. They went into a small, cosy dining room and sat down to wait. Soon a smell of frying bacon and hot, strong coffee came into the room. What joy!
Your news first,
said Dick, patting Timmy.
Did you get to Spiggy House? Was Mr. Gaston there? No, he wasn't,
said Julian.
He was out somewhere.
We waited till 7:30,
said George.
And then at last Mr. Gaston came.
He was awfully kind. He looked at Timmy's leg, and then he did something. I don't know what. Put it back into place, I suppose. And Timmy gave a yell, and George flung herself on him, and Mr. Gaston roared with laughter at George.
Well, he was very rough with Timmy's leg, but he knew what he was doing, of course, and now Timmy's perfectly all right.
What did you do then?
asked Dick.
Well, Mrs. Gaston insisted on us staying to supper,
said Julian.
We didn't leave till about 9 o'clock,
said George.
We didn't worry about you because we felt sure you'd be safely at Blue Pond Farmhouse. When we got there and found you hadn't arrived, well, we were in a state.
And then,
said Julian,
we thought if we heard nothing, we'd go down to the police first thing this morning and report your disappearance.
So down we came, without any breakfast either,
said George.
That shows how worried we were.
A delicious smell came creeping into the little dining room, followed by the innkeeper's wife carrying a large tray. It was a wonderful breakfast. extra wonderful because they were all so ravenously hungry,
You haven't told us what happened to you last night.
said Julian, serving out the bacon and eggs with a generous hand.
The plain fact is, we got lost.
Said Dick.
And when we did finally arrive somewhere, we thought it was Blue Pond Farmhouse, and we stayed the night there. A chapter of accidents.
Said Julian.
All's well that ends well, however. Don't sound so pompous. Actually, we had a pretty poor time, Ju. Poor Anne had to sleep in a little loft, and I slept in straw in a barn. Not that I minded that, but, well, peculiar things happened in the night. At least I think they did. I'm not really sure it wasn't all a dream. What peculiar things?
Asked Julian at once.
Well, I think perhaps I'll tell you when we're on our way again.
Said Dick.
You don't sound as if you had a good night at all.
Said George.
Yes.
Said Anne.
But, oh, the thing that frightened me more than anything was the bells. Did you hear them, Julian?
Didn't you know what they were ringing for? They were bells rung from the prison that nice old woman told us about. They were rung to tell everyone in the countryside that a prisoner had escaped.
Have they caught him?
Anne asked.
I don't know.
Said Julian.
We'll ask the innkeeper's wife when she comes.
They asked her, and she shook her head.
No, he's not caught yet, but he will be.
At last everyone had finished breakfast. Even starving Anne couldn't manage the last bit of toast. She sighed happily. The four went down the street and took a lane at the bottom. It wound about for a short way and then came into a valley. A stream ran down the middle of the valley. Julian pointed to a thick clump of heather.
Let's go and sit there and hear Dick's story.
They sat down, and Dick started again. He told the story of his and Anne's adventure up to the bit about the message he received in the barn. There was a silence. Then George laughed.
2 trees, gloomy water, saucy Jane, and Maggie knows about it. Well, it must have been a dream, Dick. What do you think, Julian?
I'd say it was a dream too.
Dick began to think they were right. And then a sudden thought struck him.
Wait a bit.
He said,
I've remembered something. The man slipped a bit of paper through the broken pane of the window, and I picked it up.
Dick searched quickly in his pockets. He felt paper in one of them and drew it out. It was a dirty, crumpled piece with a few words on it and a few lines.
Is this the paper?
Asked Julian.
My word. So you didn't dream it after all, then?
He took the paper. 4 heads bent over it to examine it.
I can't make any sense of this,
Said Julian.
It's a plan of some kind, I think. But what of or where, it's impossible to know. The fellow said that Maggie had one of these bits of paper too.
Said Dick, remembering.
Who in the wide world is Maggie?
Said George.
Any more to tell?
Asked Julian, intensely interested now.
Well, the son of the deaf old woman came into the barn later on.
Said Dick.
And he sat and waited and muttered and muttered. And then when I woke up, he wasn't there.
Julian pursed his lips and frowned. Then Anne spoke excitedly.
Dick, Ju, I think I know why the second man came into the barn. It was the second man that the wild-eyed man wanted to give the message to, and the bit of paper, not to Dick. He didn't want Dick, but he'd seen him creep into the barn, and I suppose he thought Dick was the man he really wanted, and that he was in the barn waiting for him.
Well, that's all very well, but how did he know my name?
Asked Dick.
He didn't know it. He didn't know it was you at all.
Said Anne excitedly.
The other man's name must have been Dick too, don't you see?
Dick suddenly remembered the boy they'd met on the way down from the old woman's cottage to Beacon's village.
Anne, what did that whistling boy say? Wait a bit. He said that was Mrs. Taggart's place, and he said we'd better not go there or her son would drive us off. And he said, yes, I remember now, he said, Dirty Dick, we call him. He's a terror. Dirty Dick. His name must be Dick, then. Why didn't I think of it before? That proves that Anne is right,
Said Julian, pleased. Anne looked pleased too.
Did the chap say who the message was from?
Julian asked.
Yes.
Said Dick.
He said it was from Naylor. I think that was the name. A message from Naylor.
Said Julian.
Well, Ju, what do we do now?
Asked Dick.
Forget the whole business? I don't know.
Said Julian.
We must think a bit.
After 2 hours' brisk walking, they asked a man if there was a farmhouse anywhere near that would give them something to eat. He nodded and pointed. See that farmhouse up there on the hill? She'll give you your dinner, I expect,
Thanks.
said Julian. And they all went up the lane that curved round the hillside. It was extraordinary to think that any children could possibly eat the meal the four did after having had such a huge breakfast. Timmy ate an enormous lunch too, and then lay down with a sigh. A small girl came in shyly as they ate.
I'm Meg,
She said.
I live with my gran. What are your names?
They told her. Then Julian had an idea.
We're walking over your moor. We've been to lots of nice places, but there's one we haven't been to yet. Do you know it? It's called Two Trees.
The little girl shook her head.
Gran would know.
She said.
Gran, where's Two Trees?
The old lady looked in at the door.
What's that? 2 trees? Oh, that was a lovely place once, but it's all in ruins now. It was built beside a queer dark lake in the middle of the moors. Let's see now, what was it called?
Gloomy Water?
Said Dick.
Yes, that's right, Gloomy Water.
Said the old lady. Once outside the farmhouse, Julian took out his big map. He unfolded it, and the four of them crouched over it as he spread it out on the heather.
That nice old lady said it was in the middle of the moors.
Said Julian.
Also, we know there's a lake, or at any rate a big pool of some kind.
His finger traced its way here and there on the map. Then George gave a cry and dabbed her finger down.
There, look! See, Gloomy Water. That must be it. Is Two Trees marked as well?
No,
Said Julian.
but perhaps it wouldn't be if it's in ruins. Well, that's certainly Gloomy Water marked there. What do you say? Shall we have a shot at going there this afternoon? I wonder exactly how far it is.
We could ask at the post office.
Said George. They went back to the village and found the post office. It was part of the village store. The old man who kept it looked over the top of his glasses at the children.
Gloomy Water? Now, what you be wanting that for? A real miserable place it is, for all it was so fine years ago.
What happened to it?
Asked Dick.
It was burnt,
Said the old man.
It flared up one night. No one knows how or why. It was burnt almost to a shell.
Could you tell us the way?
Asked Julian.
Where's your map? Is that one in your hand?
Said the old fellow. Julian spread it out. The old fellow took a pen from his waistcoat pocket and began to trace a path over the moor. He put crosses here and there.
See them crosses? They mark marshland. Don't go treading there, or you'll be up to your knees in muddy water. You follow these paths I've inked in for you, and you'll be all right.
Right.
Said Julian.
Thanks very much. We're thinking of doing a bit of camping as the weather's so beautiful. I suppose you couldn't hire us a ground sheet or two and a few rugs.
The other three stared at him in astonishment. Julian winked at them. The old man was ferreting about in a cupboard. He pulled out 2 large rubber ground sheets and 4 old rugs.
Oh, thought I had them somewhere,
He said.
Oh, thanks. Just what we want.
Said Julian, pleased.
Roll them up, you others. I'll settle up for them. Julian,
Said Dick as soon as they got outside.
what's up? What's all this for? As we've got so little time this weekend, I thought if we took things and camped out in the ruin, we might make more of our few days.
Julian explained.
What an idea!
Said George.
Not go on with our hiking, do you mean?
Well,
Said Julian.
if we find nothing, we can go on with our hike, of course. But if there's anything interesting, it's up to us to unearth it. I'm quite sure there's something up at Two Trees.
They bought some loaves of bread, some butter and potted meat, and a big fruit cake. Also some more chocolate and some biscuits. The sun began to sink low. The children hurried as much as they could, because once the sun had gone, darkness would soon come.
It looks as if the moorland near here gives way soon to a little bit of wooded country, according to the map.
Said Julian.
We'll look out for clumps of trees.
After another little stretch of moorland, Julian pointed to the right.
Look,
He said.
trees.
And isn't that water over there?
Said Anne. Was it Gloomy Water? It might be. It looked such a dark blue. They hurried on eagerly. They entered a wood. The track wound through it, and then quite suddenly they came on what had once been the lovely house of 2 trees. It was a desolate ruin, blackened and scorched with fire. The windows had no glass, the roof had gone, except for a few rafters here and there. The house stood on the edge of the lake. Gloomy Water was indeed a good name for it. It lay there, smooth and dark, a curious deep blue. It was as still as if it were frozen. They went to the silent house. The upper floors were all burnt out. The ground floor was pretty bad too, but Julian thought it might be possible to find a sheltered corner.
This might do,
He said, coming out of a blackened room and beckoning the others to him.
What a horrid room.
Said Anne, looking round.
I don't like its smell either. I don't want to sleep here.
Well, find somewhere else then. But be quick about it.
Said Julian.
It'll soon be dark. I'm going to collect heather and bracken straight away before it's too dark. You'd better come, Dick. And you, George.
The 3 of them went off and came back with vast armfuls of heather and brown bracken. Anne met them, looking excited.
I found somewhere. Come and look.
She took them to what had once been the kitchen. A door lay flat on the floor at the end of the room, and a stone stairway led downwards.
That leads down to the cellars,
Said Anne.
That door was locked. I tugged, and the whole door came off its hinges and tumbled down almost on top of me.
She stared at Julian beseechingly.
Can't we sleep down there? I don't like the feel of these horrid burnt rooms.
Julian switched on his torch and let the beam light up the cellar below. It seemed spacious and smelt all right. He went down the steps, Timmy just in front. He called up in surprise.
There's a proper room down here, as well as cellars all round. Yes, we'll certainly come down here.
It was a strange little room. Moth-eaten carpets were on the floor, and the furnishings were moth-eaten too and covered with dust.
There are still candles in the candlesticks on this shelf,
Said Dick, surprised.
We can light them and have a bit of brightness when it's dark.
They piled heather and bracken into the cellar room on the floor. The furniture was so old and moth-eaten that it gave beneath their weight and was useless for sitting on. The table was all right, though. They soon set out their food on it after George had wiped it free of dust. There was a cupboard in the cellar room. Julian opened it to see what there was.
More candles. Good.
He said, bringing out a bundle.
And plates and cups. Did anyone see a well outside?
Anne
suddenly remembered something she'd seen in the kitchen.
I believe I saw a pump up there,
she said.
Go and see, Ju. If so, it might still work.
He went up the cellar steps with a candle. That was the old pump over there in the corner. The water seemed to be clean and clear, and was certainly as cold as ice. Julian held a cup from the cellar cupboard under the tap and then tasted the water. It was delicious. George and Anne lit candles and stuck them about here and there. The light they gave was very pleasant, and they also warmed the room a little. The 4 squatted round on their beds of heather and bracken. Over bread and butter and potted meat, they discussed their plans.
What exactly are we looking for?
Asked Anne.
Do you suppose there's some secret here, Julian?
Yes,
Said Julian.
and I think I know what it is. What?
Asked George, surprised. Dick thought he knew.
It's just a hunch.
Said Julian slowly.
What if Naylor is a convict in the prison on the moors? And what if the chap who delivered the message was the escaped prisoner that they were looking for? Go on.
Said Dick.
Now, suppose that Naylor has done some big robberies.
Said Julian.
I don't know what. Jewellery robberies, probably, because they're the commonest with big criminals. Right. He does a big robbery. He hides the stuff till he hopes the hue and cry will be over. But he's caught and put into prison for a number of years. But he doesn't tell where the stuff is hidden. He daren't even write a letter to tell his friends outside the prison where it is. All his letters are read before they leave the prison. So what is he to do? Wait till someone escapes and then give him a message.
Said Dick.
And that's just what happened, isn't it, Julian? That round-headed man I saw was the escaped prisoner, and he was sent to tell Dirty Dick and Maggie where the stolen goods were hidden, so that they could get them before anyone else did. Yes, I'm sure that's it.
said Julian.
And now Maggie will certainly try to find out where the stuff is.
Well, we must find it first.
Said George, her eyes gleaming with excitement.
We're here first anyway. What was the next clue in the message, Dick, after 2 trees and gloomy water?
Saucy Jane,
Said Dick.
Sounds a silly sort of clue.
Said Anne.
Do you suppose Maggie and Jane are both in the secret?
Saucy Jane sounds more like a boat to me.
Said Dick.
Of course.
Said George.
A boat. Why not? There's a lake here, and I bet we shall find a boat called Saucy Jane tomorrow. And remember, there's that bit of paper as well. It must have something to do with the hiding place too, I should think.
Where is it?
Asked Julian. Dick fished in his pocket and brought it out.
Look, 4 lines drawn, meeting in the centre.
Said Julian.
At the outer end of each line there's a word. So faintly written I can hardly read one of them. What's this one? Tock Hill. And this next one is Steeple. Whatever are the others?
They made them out at last.
Chimney.
Said Anne.
That's the 3rd. And tall stone is the 4th.
Said George.
Whatever do they mean?
Next morning, Julian woke up first. He lay blinking in the darkness. Where was he? He remembered at once and sat up. Dick woke too and yawned.
Dick, it's 8:30.
Said Julian, looking at the luminous hands of his wristwatch.
We've slept for hours.
The girls awoke, and soon there was a great deal of noise and activity going on. The girls got breakfast in the cellar room. The bread and butter, potted meat, cake and chocolate went down well. They pushed their plates aside and planned what to do that day.
The first thing, of course, is to see if there's a boathouse and find out if there's a boat called Saucy Jane.
Said Julian.
Then we'd better try and puzzle out what that plan means. We could wander here and there and see if we can find Tall Stone. And I'll look at the map to see if Tock Hill is marked. That was on the plan too, wasn't it?
With Timmy bounding here and there, they went down to the lake.
Now, what about that boathouse?
Said Dick at last.
Is there one or not?
They walked beside the lakeside as best they could. It seemed as if there was no boathouse at all. And then George came to a little backwater leading off the lake.
Look,
She called.
here's a sort of river running from the lake.
It's not a river. It's only a little backwater.
Said Dick. They followed the backwater a little way, and then Julian gave an exclamation.
There it is.
They all looked where he pointed. They saw a long, low building built right across the backwater, where it narrowed and came to an end. The steps that went up to it from the bank outside were all broken away, completely rotted. But at one side some of the wooden boards that made the wall were so rotten that they could be pulled away to make an opening. The boys pulled them down, and then Julian squeezed through. He found himself on the broad ledge that went round the great shed. Below him was the dark, quiet water with not even a ripple on it. He called to the others.
Come along in. There's a wooden ledge to stand on here, and it's hardly rotted at all.
They all went through the opening and stood on the ledge, peering down. There were 3 boats. 2 of them were half full of water, and their bows were sunk right down. Oars were strung along the walls. A boat hook stood in one corner. Ropes were in coils on a shelf.
Let's see if any of the boats are called Saucy Jane.
Said Dick. He flashed his torch onto the nearest one. The name was almost gone.
What is it?
Said Dick.
Mary something.
Meg.
Said Anne.
Mary Meg. What's the next boat's name?
The name there was easier to read. They all read it at once. Cheeky Charlie,
Brother to Mary Meg.
said Dick.
I'm sure the last one must be Saucy Jane.
Said Anne, excited.
I do hope it is.
They went along the broad ledge and tried to read the name on the half-sunk boat there. It wasn't Saucy Jane. Careful Carrie, read the 4 mournfully. Blow,
Mary Meg, Cheerful Charlie, Careful Carrie.
said Julian.
Well, it's quite obvious that Saucy Jane belongs to the family of boats here. But where is she?
They flashed their torches round the walls of the boathouse once more. George's eye was caught by a large flat wooden thing standing upright on the ledge at one side of the house.
What's that?
She said.
Oh, a raft, isn't it? That's what those paddles are for, then, that I saw on the shelf above.
They went and examined the raft.
Yes, and in quite good condition too,
said Julian.
It would be rather fun to see if it would carry us on the water.
Oh, yes,
said Anne, thrilled.
that would be super. I always like rafts. I'd rather try that raft than any of those boats.
Well, there's only one boat that's possible to use,
said Julian.
The others are obviously no good. They must have big holes in to sink down like that.
Well, where's the Saucy Jane?
said Dick, puzzled.
All the family are here but her. Can she be hidden anywhere on the banks of the lake?
That's an idea.
said Julian, who was trying to shift the big raft.
That's a really good idea. I think we ought to explore all round the lake and see if we can find the Saucy Jane hidden anywhere.
Why don't we use the raft?
Suggested Anne.
Well, that would surely be a better way of exploring the banks of the lake than scrambling through prickly bushes, wouldn't it?
Said George.
Of course.
Said Dick.
We were silly not to think of it before. It would be a lovely way of spending the afternoon anyway. But let's eat first.
They came through the trees and saw the ruined house in the distance. Timmy suddenly gave a low growl.
What's up, Timmy?
Said George in a low voice.
What is it?
Timmy growled again. The others cautiously retreated behind bushes and looked intently towards the house. Then a woman came in sight, and with her was a man.
Maggie. I bet it's Maggie,
said Julian.
And the other is Dirty Dick,
said Dick.
I recognise him. Yes, it's Dirty Dick.
He didn't like the look of him any more than when he'd seen him up at the old cottage. Anne and George didn't like the look of the woman either. She was wearing trousers and had a jacket draped round her shoulders. She was also wearing sunglasses and smoking a cigarette. Her voice was sharp and determined.
Listen,
said Julian.
We'll just walk out into the open, talking cheerfully together, and let them see us. If they ask us what we're doing, make them think we're a bunch of harmless kids. Ready?
They nodded. Then Julian swung out from the bushes and walked into the open, calling to Dick.
Here we are again. There's the old house. My word, it looks worse than ever this morning.
George and Timmy came bounding out together, and Anne followed, her heart beating fast. The man and the woman said a few words to one another very rapidly. The man scowled. The woman called sharply.
Who are you? What are you doing here?
Just hiking,
said Julian, stopping.
It's our half-term.
What do you want to come here for, then?
Asked the woman.
This is private property.
Oh, no,
said Julian.
It's only a burnt-out ruin. Anyone can come. We want to explore this lake. It looks exciting.
We want to watch the moorhens, you see.
Put in Anne, suddenly seeing a moorhen on the water.
We're fond of nature.
And we've been told there are deer near here.
Said George.
And wild ponies.
Said Dick.
We saw some yesterday. They were really lovely. Have you seen any?
The man spoke roughly.
Stop this nonsense. People aren't allowed here. Now clear out before we make you.
Why are you here, then, if people aren't allowed?
Asked Julian, and a hard tone came into his voice.
Don't talk to us like that.
You clear off, I say,
cried the man. He took 2 or 3 steps towards them, looking very threatening indeed. George loosened her hold on Timmy's collar. Timmy also took 2 or 3 steps forward. His hackles went up, and he emitted a most fearsome growl. The man retreated.
Take hold of that dog's collar,
he ordered.
He looks savage.
Then he looks what he is,
said George. Timmy took 2 or 3 more steps forward, growling loudly, walking stiffly and menacingly. The woman called out at once.
It's all right, children. My friend here just lost his temper for a moment. Call your dog back.
Not while you're about,
said George.
Let's have something to eat,
said Julian loudly to the others.
After all, we have as much right to be here as these people have.
The 4 children marched forward. Timmy was still loose. He barked savagely twice as he came close to the unpleasant couple, and they shrank back at once. They eyed the children angrily as they went by, and watched them go into the ruined house. The children spent about half an hour over their lunch. Then they decided to go and tackle the raft and the boathouse. They left the house, and Julian suddenly caught sight of something out on the lake.
Look,
He said.
They've got one of the boats out. Dirty Dick is rowing hard. I bet they're looking for the Saucy Jane. Come on, we'd better get going if we want to keep an eye on them.
They climbed in through the wooden side of the boathouse and went to the raft. Julian saw at once that one of the boats had gone, Merry Meg. It was the only boat that was fit to take. The four began to manhandle the big raft. They took it to the edge of the ledge. It had rope handles on each side, which the children held on to.
Now, ease her gently.
Said Julian.
Gently does it. Down she goes.
And down she went, landing with a big splash in the water.
Get the paddles,
Said Julian.
then we'll be off.
Paddling the raft, the children and Timmy kept a close eye on Maggie and Dirty Dick. But that unpleasant pair didn't lead them to the Saucy Jane. Nor did their own efforts reveal its hiding place. The sun began to set. Anne thought it was a truly lovely evening. The sky was turning pink. Away in the distance, on a high slope about a mile away, she saw something that interested her. It looked like a high stone. She pointed to it.
Look, Julian.
She said.
What's that stone? Is it a boundary mark or something? It must be very big.
Julian looked where she was pointing.
Where?
He said.
Oh, that. I can't imagine what it is. It looks like a very tall stone.
Said Dick.
A tall stone.
Repeated Anne, wondering where she'd heard that before.
A tall... Oh, of course! It was printed on that plan, wasn't it? On the piece of paper Dick was given. Tall stone, don't you remember?
Yes, so it was.
Said Dick, and he stared at the faraway stone monument with interest. Then, as the raft swung onwards, high trees hid the stone. It was gone. When they got back to the boathouse, there was no sign of Maggie or Dirty Dick. But their boat was in the shed where it had been before.
They're back all right,
Said Julian.
I wonder where they are. Don't let's drag this raft into the boathouse. Let's drag it under a bush and tie it there.
They pulled the raft up to some thick bushes and tied it firmly to a root that was sticking out of the ground. Then they made their way to the ruined house, keeping a sharp lookout for Maggie and Dirty Dick. There was still no sign of them, but 2 small tents had been put up under some trees, revealing where the pair intended to spend the night. They went in, Timmy first. He didn't growl, so they knew it was safe. He led the way to the cellar steps.
We must find the loot first,
Said Anne.
We really must. Let's get out that plan again, Ju. Let's make sure that tall stone is marked on it.
They got it out and put it on the table. They bent over it once more.
Yes, tall stone is marked at the end of one of the lines.
Said Julian.
Tock Hill is at the end of the opposite line. Let's get the map and see if there is a Tock Hill.
They got the map and studied it. Anne suddenly put her finger down on it.
There it is, on the opposite side of the lake from where we saw the tall stone. Tock Hill on one side, tall stone on the other. Surely that means something.
Listen,
Said Dick suddenly.
listen, I know how to read that map, it's easy.
The others looked at him in surprise and doubt.
Tall stones, Tock Hill, Chimney and Steeple.
Dick chanted.
It's easy.
Next morning came, and daylight crept in at the burnt-out doorway and windows. Timmy stirred and went to the door. He went to the cellar steps and clattered down, waking Dick and Julian at once.
Oh, what's the time?
Said Julian, remembering immediately that he was to wake early.
Oh, 7:30. Wake up, everyone. It's daylight. We've heaps to do.
They washed hurriedly. Anne got ready some snacks for them. They all had a drink of water, and then they were ready to go. There was no sign of anyone near the 2 tents,
Good.
said Julian.
We'll be there first.
They dragged the raft out and got onto it, taking up the paddles. Then off they went, Timmy too, all feeling tremendously excited. They paddled out to the middle of the lake and looked for tall stone. It didn't seem anywhere to be seen. Then Dick gave a cry.
It's just come into sight. Good.
Said Julian.
Now, I'm going to stop paddling and keep tall stone in sight. If it goes out of sight, I'll tell you, and you must back paddle. Dick, can you possibly paddle and look out for something that could be Tock Hill on the opposite side? Right,
Said Dick, and paddled while he looked earnestly for Tock Hill.
got it.
He said suddenly.
It must be it. Look over there. A funny little hill with a pointed top. Julian, can you still see tall stone? Yes.
Said Julian.
Keep your eyes on Tock Hill. Now it's up to the girls. George, paddle away and see if you can spot Steeple.
I can see it now already,
said George. And for one moment the boys took their eyes off Tall Stone and Tock Hill and looked where George pointed. They saw the steeple of a faraway church glinting in the morning sun.
Good, good, good,
said Julian.
Now, Anne, look for Chimney. Look down towards the end of the lake where the house is. Can you see it's one chimney?
Not quite,
said Anne.
Paddle just a bit to the left. Yes, I can see the one chimney. Stop paddling, everyone. We're here.
At last all 4 things were in view at once, and the raft seemed to be still and unmoving on the quiet waters of the lake.
I'm going to drop something to mark the place,
said Julian. He had taken his torch and his pocket-knife out of his pocket, and had tied them together with string.
I haven't enough string, Dick,
he said.
You've got some, haven't you?
Dick had, of course. He passed his string over to Julian. Julian tied it to the end of the string that joined together the knife and torch. Then he dropped them into the water, letting out the string as they went down with their weight. The string slid through his hands. It stopped in a short while, and Julian knew that the knife and torch had reached the bed of the lake. He felt in his pockets again. He knew he had a cork somewhere. He found it, and tied the end of the string firmly round it. Then he dropped the cork thankfully into the water. It bobbed there, held by the string, which led right down to the knife and torch on the lake bed below. They all bent over the edge of the raft and looked down, and they saw a most surprising sight. Below them, resting on the bottom of the lake, was a boat. It lay there in the shadow made by the raft, its outline blurred by the ripples, but quite plainly it was a boat.
The Saucy Jane,
said Julian, peering down, feeling amazed and awed to think that they'd read the bearings so correctly that they were actually over the Saucy Jane herself.
The nailer must have come to 2 trees with the stolen goods, got out the Saucy Jane, and rowed her to this spot. He must have taken his bearings very carefully indeed, and then hauled the boat so that she sank down with the loot in her. Then I suppose he swam back to shore. Well done, Dick, for working it out.
I don't know why you sound so pleased,
said George.
We can't get the boat up. You know that.
Well, we don't need to pull the boat up,
said Julian.
We only want the loot. What's to prevent us from going down and getting it? I'm quite prepared to strip and dive down to the bottom there and feel about for any sack or bag or box. If I find one, I'll come up for air, borrow a bit of rope from the raft, and go down again. Tie the rope to the sack, and you can haul it up to the surface.
Oh, Julian, it sounds so easy, but is it really?
Said Anne. George and Dick considered the proposal carefully. They were most impressed by Julian's idea.
Well, I'm jolly well going to try it,
said Julian, and began to strip off his jersey. Anne felt the water.
Ugh, I'd hate to dive down to the bottom of this horrid, cold, dark lake,
she said.
I think you're brave, Ju.
Don't talk rubbish,
said Julian. He was ready to go in now. He dived neatly into the water with hardly a splash. The other 3 craned over the edge of the raft to watch. They could see him down, deep down in the water, a ghostly figure. He came up again at last and panted hard. At last his breathing grew more even, and he grinned at them.
Oh, that's better. Well, it's there,
he said triumphantly. Everyone was thrilled.
Oh, Julian,
said George.
Yes. At one end is a waterproof bag. Almost a sack, it's so big. I ran my hands over it, and it's waterproof, all right, so the loot must be packed in there. Did it feel heavy?
Asked Dick.
I gave it a tug and couldn't move it,
said Julian.
Either it's wedged in somehow or is really heavy. Anyway, we can't fetch it out by diving down for it. I'll have to dive down again, fix a rope to it, then come up, and we'll give a heave-ho and up she'll come.
Dick looked hurriedly over the raft.
These bits of rope we've got won't do, Julian,
he said. Julian was drying himself and looking towards the end of the lake where 2 trees stood. He was frowning. The others looked too.
See that glint?
said Julian.
Well, that's either Maggie or Dirty Dick using field glasses. They're going to keep an eye on us while we're here.
Oh, so that's what the flash is,
said George.
the glint of field glasses. Yes, they're watching us. Blow. That'll put an end to us trying to haul up the loot, Jew. They'd see it and wait for us.
There's only one time to go when they won't have their glasses watching us,
said Julian, beginning to dress himself very rapidly.
and that's tonight. We'll go tonight. My word, what an adventure!
They paddled rapidly away. Dick took a last glance back to make sure that the cork was still bobbing on the water to mark the place where the sunken boat lay. Yes, it was still there. As soon as Maggie saw the children coming back again, she and Dirty Dick disappeared into their tents. Julian grinned.
They've heaved a sigh of relief and gone to have a snack. I could do with one myself.
Everyone felt the same. Paddling was hard work, and the air on the lake was keen, quite enough to give anyone a large appetite. They pushed the raft into its hiding place again. Then they made their way to the old house. They took the meal up into the sunshine and enjoyed it.
Do you know it's 2:45?
Said Julian, amazed.
Where has the time gone? In a couple of hours or so it'll be dark. Let me see. The moon will be well up at about 11 o'clock. That's the time to go, I think. Oh, that water was cold. I don't feel very thrilled at the thought of diving in tonight. I'll do it.
Said Dick at once.
My turn this time? No. I know exactly where to spot the loot.
Said Julian.
I'll have to go down. But you can come down too and help to tie the rope onto it. Right.
Said Dick. Before they went back into the house, Julian and Dick slipped down to the boathouse for the coil of rope that they'd want that night. They found it easily enough and came back pleased. It was quite good, strong rope. Julian put Timmy on guard at the doorway. Then he and the others went into the dark cellar room and lighted a couple of candles. They all snuggled down in their beds of heather. Anne woke the others at 10 to 11. They were all in such a comfortable sleep that it was hard to wake them. But soon they were up and about, whispering.
Where's the rope? Good. Here it is.
It'll be freezing on the lake.
Everyone ready? No, not a sound.
Timmy had come to the cellar room as soon as he'd heard them stirring. He knew he had to be quiet, so he didn't give even one small bark.
Any sign of the others?
Whispered Dick. Julian stood at the doorway and looked towards the tents. No, all was quiet there. Keeping well in the shadows, the five crept down to the lakeside. They pulled out the raft and threw the coil of rope onto it. Then they clambered on.
Well, we know more or less where we've got to paddle the raft to,
said Julian.
We'll go in that direction and then see if we're spotting the bearings. I'm sure we're going right at the moment.
They were. George soon saw Tall Stone, and then Tock Hill came into sight. It wasn't long before Steeple was seen too, shining in the moonlight.
I bet Naylor came and hid his loot out here on a moonlit night,
said Julian.
All the bearings can be seen so very clearly, even Tall Stone.
There's one chimney now,
said Anne.
We've got them all in view. We should be near our mark.
We are,
said Dick, pointing to a little dark bobbing thing nearby.
The cork! How extremely clever we are! Idiot,
said Julian. Both boys stripped quickly, putting their clothes into a neat pile in the middle of the raft.
Look after the man,
said Julian.
Got the rope, Dick? Come on then, in we go.
The boys dived in one after the other. Splash, splash. The raft rocked and Timmy nearly went in too. Julian could see the sunken boat just below him. With 2 strong strokes he reached it and tugged at the waterproof bag there. Dick was beside him almost at once, the rope in his hands. The boys twisted it tightly round the top part of the bag. Before they could finish the job, they had to rise up to the surface to breathe. The girls waited anxiously till the boys' breathing grew easier. Julian turned and grinned at them.
Everything's all right,
he said.
Now, down we go again.
Julian and Dick were down at the sunken boat in a matter of a second or two. They finished the task of tying the rope to the waterproof bag. Julian took the rest of the rope length in his hands in order to take it up to the surface. Then, bursting for breath again, the two boys shot up to the raft, hopping out of the water with loud gasps. They climbed on board. They took a minute to get their breath, and then Dick and Julian took the rope together. The girls watched, their hearts beating fast. Now was the test.
Now, pull,
said Julian.
Steady does it. Steady. Steady. It's coming. Gosh, it's really coming. Pull, Dick. Pull.
It's coming! It's there! Look, just below the surface!
Said Anne.
One more pull, boys!
But it was impossible to pull the heavy bag on board without upsetting the raft.
Look, let's paddle back to the shore and let the sack drag behind us,
said Julian at last.
Dress again, Dick, and we'll get back to the old house and open the sack in comfort.
The boys dressed as quickly as they could. They were shivering and were very glad to take up their paddles and work hard to get the raft back to the shore. They looked back at the bulky object following them, dragging along just under the surface. What was in that bag? They came at last to the end of the lake. Making as little noise as possible, they dragged the raft under its usual bush. Dick and Julian pulled the waterproof sack out of the water. They carried it between them as they went cautiously back to the house. They came to the doorway and pulled the bundle into the kitchen.
Go and light the candles in the cellar room,
said Julian to George.
I just want to make sure that that couple aren't snooping anywhere about.
Not a sound was heard. Not a shadow moved. They set Timmy on guard and left him there, dragging the dripping, heavy bundle across the stone floor of the kitchen. They bumped it down the cellar steps, and at last had it before them, ready to be opened. Julian looked to see how to undo the waterproof wrapping.
I see,
he said.
It's been folded over and over the goods, and then sewn up to make a kind of bag. It must have kept the loot absolutely waterproof.
Buck up,
said George.
I shall tear it open myself in a minute.
Julian cut the strong stitches that closed the covering with his pocket-knife. They began to unwrap the bundle. There seemed to be yards and yards of waterproof covering, but at last it was off, and there, in the middle of the mass of waterproof, were scores of little boxes, leather-covered boxes that everyone knew at once were jewel boxes. Anne opened a box. They all exclaimed in wonder. A magnificent necklace glittered on black velvet. It shone and glinted and sparkled in the candlelight as if it were on fire.
It must be that wonderful necklace stolen from the Queen of Falonia,
said George at last.
I saw a picture of it in the papers. What diamonds! Oh, are they diamonds?
Said Anne in awe. Every box contained precious stones of some kind. Sapphire bracelets, ruby and diamond rings, a strange and wonderful opal necklace, earrings of such enormous diamonds that Anne was quite sure no one would be able to bear the weight of them.
Did it all belong to the Queen of Falonia?
Anne asked.
No, some of it belonged to a princess who was visiting her,
said Julian.
Well, it's better that we should have them rather than Maggie or Dirty Dick,
said George.
Now, let's see,
said Julian, sitting down on the edge of the table.
We'd better start off fairly early tomorrow. I think our best course would be to ring up that nice Mr. Gaston and tell him that we've got important news for the police. He might even arrange a car for us.
Have we got to carry all these boxes?
Said George in dismay.
No, that would be asking for trouble if anyone spotted them. We'll just have to wrap up the jewels in our hankies and stuff them down into the bottom of our rucksacks. We'll leave the boxes here. The police can collect them afterwards if they want to.
It was all decided. The four divided up the glittering jewellery and wrapped it carefully into 4 handkerchiefs, one for each of them. They stuffed the hankies into their rucksacks.
We'd better use them for pillows,
said Dick.
Then they'll be quite safe.
They lay down on their heather and bracken, excited and pleased. What a weekend!
Oh, good night,
said Julian, yawning.
I feel very, very rich. Richer than I'll ever be in my life again. Well, I'll enjoy the feeling while I can.
The next morning the children got up early and were soon ready to go. Each had a rucksack and Mac on their back, and each had jewels worth thousands of pounds in their charge. What a very extraordinary thing,
It'll be a lovely walk across the moors.
said Anne as they went along.
I feel like singing now everything's turned out all right. The only thing is, nobody at school will believe George or me when we tell them what's happened.
Everyone laughed. Timmy looked round with his tongue out and what George called his smiling face. Then his smile vanished and he began to bark, facing to the rear of the children. They looked round, startled.
Gosh, it's Maggie and Dirty Dick, rushing along like fury,
said Dick.
They're trying to cut us off,
said Julian.
Look, they've left the path, and they're going to take a short cut. What idiots they are. Unless they know this bit of marsh moor country, they'll get bogged.
Maggie and Dirty Dick were yelling and shouting in a fury. Dirty Dick shook his fists and leapt from tuft to tuft like a goat.
They look as if they've gone quite mad,
said Anne.
What's the matter with them? I know.
Said George.
They've been into our cellar room, and they've found that waterproof covering and all those empty boxes. They've found out that we've got the goods.
Of course,
said Julian.
No wonder they're in a fury. They've lost a fortune to us four. What do they think they can do now, though?
Said Dick.
We've got Timmy. He'll certainly fly at them if they come too near. But Dirty Dick looks mad enough to fight even Timmy. Honestly, I think he's gone off his head.
Timmy began to bark fiercely. He snarled and looked very savage. He could see that the man was spoiling for a fight with someone. All right, Timmy didn't mind.
Let's hurry on,
said Julian.
But no shortcuts for us, mind. We'll keep strictly to the path. Maggie's in difficulties already.
So she was. She was floundering ankle-deep in marshy ground, yelling to Dirty Dick to help her. But he was too intent on cutting right across the children's path. And then he got into difficulties too. He suddenly sank up to his knees. He tried to clamber out and reach a tuft of some sort. He missed his footing and went down again. He gave an anguished yell. "My ankle! Oh, I've broken it!" The children stopped and looked at Dirty Dick. He was sitting on a tuft, nursing his foot.
Ought we to help him?
Said Anne, trembling.
Good gracious, no,
said Julian.
He won't be able to get far out of that marsh, and nor will Maggie by the look of her. Down she goes again, look. The police will find it very easy to pick up that unpleasant couple when they come along to look for them.
They went on their way again. They walked all the way to Rebel's. It took them 2 hours.
We'll go to the post office and telephone from there,
said Julian. Mr. Gaston answered the telephone himself. Hello? Who? Oh, yes, of course I remember you. You want a bit of help? Well, what can I do for you? Julian told him. Mr. Gaston listened in amazement. What? You found the Felonia jewels? You're not spoofing me, are you? Julian assured him that he wasn't. Mr. Gaston could hardly believe his ears. Right, of course I'll put you in touch with the police. We'd better go to Gathercombe. I know the inspector there. Fine fellow. Where are you? Oh, yes, I know it. Well, wait there, and I'll fetch you in my car in about half an hour, say. He rang off, and Julian went to find the others.
Now, I only want one thing. Breakfast,
said George. They had some sandwiches, buns, biscuits, and ginger beer, which they bought at a little shop down the road. And just as they were finishing, up swept Mr. Gaston in an enormous car. Julian introduced Anne and Dick. Timmy was thrilled to see him again, and offered him a polite paw, which Mr. Gaston shook heartily. They drove to the police station. Mr. Gaston had already warned the inspector they were coming, and he was waiting for them. "Come along into my private room," he said. "Now, first of all, where are these jewels?" The children undid their rucksacks, and out of the hankies inside they poured the shining, glittering jewellery onto the oak table. The inspector whistled. "You've got them," he said. "The very jewels. And to think the police everywhere have been hunting for them for months and months and months." Where did you find them, youngsters?
It's rather a long story,
said Julian. He began to tell it, and he told it well, prompted by the others when he forgot anything. When Julian came to the bit where Dirty Dick and Maggie had been left floundering in the marshes, the inspector interrupted him.
Wait, would they still be there? They would? Right. Half a minute.
He pressed a bell and a policeman appeared.
Tell Johns to take his 3 men and a car and go to the Green Marshes near Gloomy Water,
ordered the inspector.
He's to pick up our old friends Dirty Dick and Maggie Martin. And look sharp.
Julian's tale came to an end. The inspector looked across at the tousle-headed, dirty, untidy group and smiled. He held out his hand.
Shake,
he said.
all of you.
You're the kind of kids we want in this country. Plucky, sensible, responsible youngsters who use your brains and never give up. I'm proud to meet you. Good luck to you, famous five. Yes, good luck to you, famous five. And may you have many more adventures.